Welcome to the first official episode of Gems and Lies, the show where I give you my opinion on movies and you tell me what you think in the comments. Forgive the production cost. We are currently running a guerrilla studio, so we are also currently manifesting a more expensive studio. So stand by on that. Point being, we don't have a teleprompter. So, I am your host, The Verse, aka The Universe. Some people call me V. Now, I'm not a licensed therapist or anything like that. I'm just a genius. Today, we will be discussing the Lorax, the animation, Dr. Seuss, the 1972 version. I believe it's on YouTube. And we will be discussing that movie today. Or rather, I will be telling you my opinions on it and you can comment. Now, before I get into the actual movie and that part of the show, for the purposes of this movie and this show, I'm going to explain racism generally. I'm just going to tell a story for the kids about racism, just so we can all be on the same page. A long time ago, the entire world was dark. Dark as the night, pitch black. Then there was light, and the light was the sun, and the sun gave birth to all life, including the human race. The sun gave birth to men and women and scattered them across the earth. Some lived closer to the sun and some lived further. The closer to the sun, the darker the complexion of the men and women, and the further from the sun, the lighter the complexion of the men and women. Then an evil beast came and said it wanted to consume all of the children of the sun, beginning with the darkest skin tone and moving on through to the lightest skin tone until it was done consuming all and everything. It has been consuming children ever since. This program seeks to save all the children, starting with the highest risk groups, as suggested by the order of operations theory. So, that's just a little tidbit. I am The Verse. This is a Beautiful Empire Initiative broadcast. If you are watching this, then you are the Beautiful Empire. Now, to begin the show, the movie we will be discussing, as I said, is the Lorax, the 1972 animation based on the Dr. Seuss book. And so this is the point where you will want to go watch the Lorax, the 1972 version. And when you are done, come back and we can discuss it. Oos. Are you done? I'm one taking this, so if you're done watching the Lorax, excellent, we can begin the discussion. So, the name of the show is Gems and Lies, so I'm going to point out all of the gems in the movie I saw and all of the lies that I saw, in my opinion. The lies or deceptions, because movies can be deceiving, smoke and mirrors, and such. This is a list that I made of all the gems and lies. As I said, the movie industry is smoke and mirrors a lot of the time, so I think that proved another point. So, gems and lies. We'll start with the gems of the movie. And the movie begins, well, we'll just start with the gems. The greed. It showed that greed is bad, and that is good. Because when we were going through the movie, we saw the effects of greed, etc. And it says, even the Lorax says, sir, you're crazy with greed, etc. So, that's good. That is a gem. It showed you the truth, because greed is, in fact, a bad thing. So, next up, going through, it has global warming, going through effects of it, or pollution, if you will. If you're not into the global warming thing, pollution, what have you. Same difference, kills environment and all this. So yeah, it has pollution, killing the river, and immediate effects of factories and whatnot. So it has all of this. Let's see, and then it has the balance, showing that balance is good. You know, obviously that's the same thing as the pollution being bad for the environment and for all the creatures and whatnot. It shows that capitalism is, if managed poorly, can lead to such atrocities as the situation in the animation, where the entire land is decimated and whatnot, all in exchange for the financial gain that, like the cartoon showed. Let's see. Colonization. It showed the effects of colonization. When he was talking to somebody on the phone about the stock market, and he said, we're going international and X, Y, and Z. So he wasn't just there, he was in other places. Of course, it's a child's film. I didn't catch that when I was a kid and I saw it. But watching it again recently, I caught that. And that was another truth that the movie showed. The effects of greed on an international scale, as opposed to just on the local level that the movie, the animation was showing in the Lorax's world. And yeah, so that's a lot of gems in the movie, which is actually why I like movies, because of all of the gems that they have in them. And I like truth. So now for the lies of the movie, or the deceptions, if you will, because as I said, the movie industry is often smoke and mirrors, and if there's a truth, then oftentimes there's a lie somewhere, or a deception hidden in there somewhere that can be detrimental to an individual's psyche, if, in my opinion, if one is not prepared going in to look for things that might be detrimental to certain children watching children's films, or any kind of films, just people watching movies. Psychologically, it can be detrimental, just as the gems are in fact good. The lies are detrimental, or can be, if you can't see them. So now we will discuss the lies of that particular movie. First off, the Lorax is the story of the Native Americans. Obviously, if you're an adult, you saw this. If you're a child, you might not have been taught about it. I hadn't been taught about it when I was a child. So that is the Native American story, but it's interesting because the actual movie does not have any Native Americans in it. It just has animals. And so the animals, what are they called? Barbaloots. The animals are used to represent the natives, as I saw, in my opinion. Of course, these are all my opinions. And I'm not a licensed professional psychologist or anything like that. I'm just a genius, as I said before. No ego. I'm also very humble. Now, it is the story of the Native Americans. I didn't see any Native Americans represented, well, they were represented, but they were represented as animals, not as humans, which brings me to my next point. The Onceler is a white man because this is the story of the Native Americans. And also when the Onceler family came through, you saw somebody buy a Onceler garment and they didn't have a glove on. It's probably the only person that I saw of the Onceler people without a green glove over his hand. And he reaches and buys the thneed, the product. And it doesn't show a glove over his hand. It shows a white man grabbing the thing. So that was actually a gem. It's the story of the Native Americans, so they did actually cover everyone in gloves except for one time they showed that it was a white man coming through to the land. So that was a gem. It did show that reality of that story, even if it didn't have Native Americans in the story as people. They were represented by the Barbaloots, or the bear creatures. And later in the movie, it shows Trail of Tears scenes when everyone's getting kicked out. And again, that falls under the deception because I wasn't aware anyway that it was the Native American story. So that scene where everybody's walking away in the trail, single file, with their wounded and whatnot, is actually a deeper scene than I realized watching it. But now I saw it as an adult and I said, wow, that's the Trail of Tears. That's what I saw. Now, later in the story, the Onceler, the main guy, when he's having an argument with the Lorax, he says, I speak for men. That's what he says, I speak for men. And this is also an interesting take because, once again, it is the story of the Native Americans of America, the Native Americans, the slaughter, the genocide of the Native Americans, rather, not their story, as cinema likes to portray with people of color, their story being the genocidal period where they were being wiped out, as in slave movies and whatnot, leaving out African history, etc. Tries to make the history of the people of color their trauma as their entire history. Hollywood likes to do that a lot, in my opinion. Now, let's see. So the Onceler says, I speak for men. And that's an interesting thing because I don't believe he does. I believe that in this particular story, he's speaking for white men because it is the story of the Native American. So when he says, I speak for men, that kind of tries to put a lot of blame on everybody, which in a lot of cases is the case with humanity. But in this particular story, with the Native Americans and the white man, or European, what have you, Spaniard, with that whole particular story, the fact that that is the story being told here, from what I can tell, the fact that he is saying that he speaks for all men is also a deception, because really he's speaking for the white men, which is everyone who was there, which you saw, they showed you in the one gem. A little tricky. You just gotta catch the little gems, smoke and mirrors. Let's see. So now, that was an interesting take, especially since it's about the genocide of a people. And so, that particular story, that is not speaking for all men. Now, as I said, humanity is flawed, but with cinema, we have to take an approach of case by case. You're telling this story from what I saw, so truth is important, always. Now, the Lorax is a native chief, from what I saw. That was my take. The Lorax it's a story of the Native Americans. So the Lorax is the chief. He's speaking for the trees. He's speaking for the people. He's speaking for the animals and everyone. So he's the Lorax. That's who he's speaking for, and he is the chief, from what I saw. So it's interesting. At the end of the movie, the Lorax ascends up and through the smog and all of that stuff. Very similar to the typical martyr of the people. The leader of the people always getting killed and then getting crucified, and then, Jesus resurrecting and then ascending, but point is, the chief of the people is there, and then he is, from what I saw, in my opinion, he got killed off and then left at the end, like what happens with so many leaders of Native people of color. So that was another interesting thing I noticed. Now, at the end of the movie, the very end of the movie, and the beginning of the movie, it starts off and ends off with a white child approaching the tower of the Onceler. So he's the last hope, the story of the last white hope. And it's great that there can be hope at the end of the movie. That is very important. However, there are no, as it is a story of the Native peoples of America, the Native Americans, I found it interesting that it wasn't a Native American child coming forward and saying, hey, the Lorax is dead, but I'm the last, and, you know, and I will take the last seed and try to, you know, bring it back, bring the people back, bring the Barbaloots back, and all this, you know, bring the Lorax and everyone back, all of the Native people who live in harmony with the land. So they didn't have that. They only have one child, one white child. And that's a major thing in Hollywood when children don't see themselves represented. And it creates a complex in all children when they see that kind of thing. And like I said, I thought it would have been interesting to have a Native American child. You could have even had a group of children, you know, a group of diverse children, and then he can hand it and say, hey, you guys are the future, you know what I mean? You guys are the children of all the tribes and etc. Because there's only one race, the human race, and there are many tribes. So you children are all the children, and here's the last seed. It could have been inspiring like that for all the kids, but instead the only one who got any credit or any hope was the white child, which is how Hollywood likes to operate. The narrative Hollywood oftentimes, as I have seen, is that narrative. So that is a deception. That is a lie, that the white child is the only hope. Now, one hope, yes, we're all children. And we're all children at the end of that movie, coming to save the world. I feel the world that now is at that place where many people are feeling that. So it's great, but everyone needs to be included, and the children of color are getting left out, and that's a major issue in Hollywood and reality. And which brings me to my next point, which is reality. All of these animations and movies, and they're fantastic fantasies and stuff. And when you're fantasizing like that, it helps you to manifest. You're manifesting things, you know. So it's good to have positive things to assist you in that process, as opposed to things trying to hinder you, or trying to help only one group as opposed to the whole collective, which hurts everybody at the end of the day. So the reality is that children of color are being left behind, and they are the highest risk. And all children are at risk, but the highest risk children, I believe this issue needs to be addressed. And it is the way that we will solve many issues if we help the highest risk need among us. And so on and so forth. Order of operations mathematically. Solve the first problem and then proceed. So the reality is children of color are being left behind. Case in point, reality manifesting, etc. Art, life imitating art, vice versa, all this. Greta Thunberg. I saw that and it made me think of the Lorax, and I hadn't seen the Lorax in so long, but I saw Greta Thunberg, a little white girl, the activist doing the Greenpeace thing, and that's great. Everyone should be on it. But it's very interesting to give this platform to only the little white girl, instead of like the Native American who's been probably taught this stuff, you know, yeah, of course, they're taught this stuff, part of the culture. So if your very culture is that, you should probably be at the table with the United Nations, with the white girl and everybody else, all of the children. I don't know why everyone didn't get a child to send to the United Nations as a representative, like everyone didn't want it to help the world. Because, I mean, there were little kids of color getting killed, and the Panthers and everybody went to the United Nations about the little colored kids, the little kids of color. And the United Nations, I didn't see anybody put any little little black boy on a pedestal saying, hey, here's his plight. So I think the opportunity needs to be extended to everybody and the world, all the children of the world, for every cause, because every cause is everyone's cause, and it all comes back together, back to the source. So that is the little girl I was talking about. As I said, props to that little girl for doing cool things, and it's just sad that the media won't give that opportunity to all the children, but maybe they will, because this is a new age. So that's what this show is about. Just my opinion, pointing out things that maybe you saw too, maybe you felt too, maybe yay, maybe nay. Let me know in the comments, and that is all I have to say about this particular film at this particular point in this particular time. So, I am your host, The Verse, as in the universe, or the multiverse, or a verse in a song. This has been a Beautiful Empire Initiative broadcast. If you're listening to this or watching this, you are the Beautiful Empire.